So, this may be a bit controversial, but you don't really need to understand math. Okay, maybe at first you need to, especially if you are trying to learn a new topic. But after that, trying your best to understand a certain topic wouldn't really do you any good. And here's why. But just a disclaimer. These are all based on my personal experience. I still truly believe that trying to understand the reason behind every math concept is important, especially at a high level. But assuming that you are still in high school or probably in a undergrad math class, I believe that the points that I would state here would be really relevant for you. Reason number 1. It is time consuming. So when you are trying to understand math, you can spend a lot of time reading your math books or notes, and after that long reading session, you still end up having a hard time grasping how such thing works. Say in calculus, if we are learning derivatives. So if you search in Google derivatives, it is defined as the rate of change of a function with respect to a variable. Let's say that again. It is the rate of change of a function with respect to a variable. Okay, it's still hard to understand. So let's say if you try to dwell really your time on understanding that thing. So yeah, let's say you master that concept. Okay, let's move on. Now, say your teacher showed you a graph of a slope of a tangent line. Say this graph and that line is the slope of the tangent line. It's related to derivative. Okay, say you master that idea. So you master that. The definition of derivative and that concept. You really understand it truly. Now, during your quizzes or your exams, does it really matter that you understand that one? I would say not, since most of your exams and quizzes in calculus or in derivatives specifically is just focused on how to get the derivative of this one, and this one. So does it really matter to learn this one? Well, yeah, probably in higher math, but for now, I believe that skipping this part is more beneficial to you since you can allot that time of trying to understand this one to a better form of learning, like quizzing yourself or answering exercises and such. Oh, but you need to know where a certain thing come from. You can argue that one, and I agree. But the problem is, a lot of people tend to focus on this part alone so much that they don't really do the things that matters more. What are these things that matters more? Well, we will dive into that probably in the final part of this video. Reason number 2. It is passive. So imagine if you, in class, you did exercises in your math class and then you went home. So you try to review these exercises. What do most people do when we study these exercises? What we do? We read them. We read them. We read them. We keep on reading them, rereading them until we think to ourselves that we understand it or we are confident with it. So this is the most common thing that we usually do. Then what happens on our next quiz or exam? During the exam, we see a problem similar to the one that we read when we review our notes, trying to understand a certain question or a certain problem. So during exam, we get that feeling that we kind of know the process, we kind of know how to get it, but we can't do it. We can't get it at that very moment. Why? Because we just passively scroll to our notes. And this is what happens when we just solely try to understand a specific concept instead of doing. It's like learning chess. You can understand its concepts and how to play it if you watch videos. Passively, if you try to watch videos, try to study the game, try to understand it, but when it's time to action, there's a time limit, you're taking turns with your opponent, you will struggle if you don't really know or you don't really had the experience on how to do it or do it for yourself or simply play the game. Reason number 3. It is not really required in exams. In math, especially in math quizzes or exams, it is seldom that the professor would ask you to define a certain definition or theorem or concept, like how did we acquire the product rule in derivatives, or how did we acquire the chain rule. In most of my exams, it's seldom that I would see a problem like that, probably in higher level math, since proving is really, really important. But for high school math, most cases, it's more of how you can apply that specific rule rather than understanding how did that rule exist. So yeah, in general, it doesn't really matter if you know how a theorem was come up with or how mathematicians have come up with the concept of that one. What matters is that you know how and when to use these things when faced with math problems. Application is more important than just learning the concept behind it. Take note of that. So, given that, what should we do instead? Well, the answer is simple. It's just do math. Do the math. Instead of trying to understand math, just do the math. Keep on answering and answering and answering examples. Examples here, examples there, examples. Eventually, you'll probably face a hard question that you can't really answer. What should you do? Skip it and do more examples. Eventually, probably when you go back to that example, you'll realize that, probably know this one. Why? Because you answered a lot of examples already. Or if you still don't know, that's the time to consult with your peers or even your teacher. But after that one, immediately apply their feedback, apply it, and do the math again. That's basically it. That's the simple formula on how we attack math. It's just do the math. You'll notice that eventually when you face your exams and quizzes, you'll realize that you can actually do it. Why? Because you'll notice that you have already did or even attempted a similar problem before. Not just once, not just twice, probably hundreds of times, because you kept on answering and answering a lot of examples. In my personal experience in exams, there are times that I'm not really familiar with the concepts that is present in that exam. But when I see a problem, and immediately there's like a switch in my brain that I see that, I have already did this one. And immediately I try to answer it during the exam, and eventually the flow continues and I'll be able to answer that item. So that is the formula. It's not really a secret formula. I think it's pretty obvious in anything that you do. Action is more important than just simply learning concepts behind it. Nothing can replace applying or taking action in anything. So to end this, take note that there's nothing wrong with trying to understand math. But if all you do is just that, then you're probably not doing the actual math.